It happens every single morning across America. The alarm goes off, and within minutes, millions of us make a series of decisions that we believe are healthy, responsible choices for starting our day. Yet what most Americans don't realize is that these common morning rituals may be sabotaging our health, metabolism, and energy levels before we even leave the house. The truth about breakfast, the meal that literally breaks our fast, is far more complex and consequential than most nutrition experts have been willing to admit. Let me introduce you to Michael, a 42-year-old marketing director from Denver. For years, Michael prided himself on his disciplined morning routine: a large glass of orange juice, a bowl of granola with low-fat milk, and a banana for extra potassium and fiber. "I thought I was doing everything right," he told me, shaking his head. "I was following conventional wisdom to the letter. But by 10 a.m. every day, I was starving, irritable, and could barely focus in meetings. My doctor eventually diagnosed me with prediabetes, and I was completely blindsided." Michael's story is shockingly common. According to recent data from the CDC, 88 million American adults, more than 1 in 3, have prediabetes, and over 80% of them don't even know it. What if the very breakfast choices we've been told are healthy are actually accelerating this epidemic? The latest research suggests this may be exactly what's happening in kitchens across America every morning. Dr. Elizabeth Reardon, a metabolic specialist at Johns Hopkins Medicine, explains, "What we're discovering about the body's response to different breakfast compositions is revolutionizing our understanding of metabolic health. The conventional breakfast wisdom of the past 40 years isn't just outdated, it may be actively harmful for many people." Let's examine the 5 most damaging breakfast mistakes that nutrition scientists now identify as potential health saboteurs. These aren't rare, extreme habits. These are the everyday choices millions of Americans make, believing they're doing the right thing for their bodies. The first and perhaps most widespread mistake is starting your day with what I call a naked carbohydrate breakfast. That's any morning meal dominated by carbohydrates without adequate protein or healthy fats to buffer their impact on your blood sugar. The classic American breakfast of cereal, toast, fruit, and juice is essentially a sugar bomb, even when those foods are marketed as whole grain or all natural. Dr. Benjamin Bikman, a metabolic scientist and author who specializes in insulin resistance, explains the science. When you consume carbohydrates without protein or fat, especially after an overnight fast, your blood glucose spikes dramatically. This triggers a large insulin response, which then drives that blood sugar down sharply. This glucose roller coaster sets you up for hunger, cravings, energy crashes, and over time, insulin resistance. His research shows that nearly 70% of typical American breakfasts fall into this problematic category. The consequences extend far beyond just feeling hungry by mid-morning. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that people who routinely experience these post-meal glucose spikes have a 40% higher risk of cardiovascular disease, even if their average blood sugar levels appear normal on standard tests. The repeated insulin surges triggered by these high carbohydrate breakfasts eventually lead to insulin resistance, the precursor to type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and even certain cancers. The second critical mistake is drastically underestimating protein needs at breakfast. The average American breakfast contains just 10 to 15 grams of protein, while emerging research suggests that consuming 25-30 grams in your first meal of the day optimizes muscle maintenance, metabolic health, and even cognitive function. Dr. Donald Layman, professor emeritus of nutrition at the University of Illinois, has studied protein metabolism for over 30 years. His research reveals that adequate morning protein is particularly crucial for adults over 40, who begin to lose muscle mass at a rate of 3 to 5% per decade. The body is in a catabolic state after an overnight fast, he explains. Without sufficient protein at breakfast, you'll break down muscle tissue to meet your amino acid needs. Over time, this leads to accelerated sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss, which is directly linked to metabolic dysfunction and decreased longevity. This protein shortfall has particular consequences for women, whose breakfast choices tend to be even lower in protein than men's. A study from the University of Missouri found that women who increased their breakfast protein intake from 15 to 30 grams experienced sustained reductions in hunger and completely eliminated unhealthy snacking before lunch. The third breakfast blunder is perhaps the most surprising: drinking fruit juice, even 100% fruit juice with no added sugar. For decades, orange juice has been positioned as a healthy cornerstone of the American breakfast. The reality? A 12-ounce glass of orange juice contains roughly the same amount of sugar as a 12-ounce can of cola, about 36 grams. The fiber that would normally slow sugar absorption has been removed, leaving only the fruit sugar, which hits your bloodstream almost as quickly as table sugar. Dr. Robert Lustig, endocrinologist and professor at the University of California, San Francisco, doesn't mince words about juice. Fruit juice isn't nutritionally equivalent to whole fruit. It's essentially a sugar delivery system with some vitamins thrown in. The fructose in juice goes directly to your liver, where it's processed almost identically to alcohol, driving fatty liver disease and insulin resistance. His research team found that daily juice consumption was associated with a 21% increased risk of type 2 diabetes. What's particularly disturbing is that many parents serve juice to their children, believing it's a healthy choice. A recent survey found that 40% of American children under age 5 drink fruit juice daily, with an average consumption of 10 ounces, containing about 30 grams of sugar. This early introduction to sweetened beverages shapes taste preferences and metabolic responses that can last a lifetime. The fourth major breakfast mistake is relying on conventional breakfast foods that are marketed as heart-healthy, but are actually inflammatory. The prime example is industrial seed oils, like soybean, corn, and canola oils, which are ubiquitous in breakfast foods from granola to breakfast bars to the oils used for cooking eggs in restaurants. These highly processed oils weren't part of the human diet until about 100 years ago, but now they're the primary fat source in the American food supply. They're high in omega-6 fatty acids, which in excess can promote inflammation and oxidative stress. The ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats in the typical American diet has skyrocketed from roughly 1.1 in our ancestral diet to about 20.1 today, with breakfast foods being significant contributors to this imbalance. Dr. Catherine Shanahan, a physician who specializes in metabolic health, explains, "These industrial seed oils undergo intense processing at high temperatures, creating compounds that your body was never designed to handle. They become integrated into your cell membranes, where they can disrupt normal cellular function and drive chronic inflammation, the root of most modern diseases." The fifth breakfast error is perhaps the most universal: eating on autopilot without considering your individual metabolic responses. The emerging field of personalized nutrition has revealed that identical breakfast foods can trigger dramatically different blood sugar responses in different people. Researchers at the Weizmann Institute of Science monitored the continuous glucose levels of 800 people eating identical meals. They found that some participants experienced dangerously high glucose spikes after eating bananas, while others had minimal response. The same variation occurred with virtually every food tested. This groundbreaking research suggests that generic breakfast recommendations are fundamentally flawed. Your perfect breakfast might be someone else's metabolic disaster. Dr. Sarah Berry from King's College London, who co-leads the PREDICT study, the world's largest ongoing nutritional research program, emphasizes this point. We've identified that factors like your gut microbiome composition, sleep quality, stress levels, and even the time of day you eat all interact with your unique genetic makeup to determine how you respond to different breakfast foods. The idea that there's one perfect breakfast for everyone is simply not supported by science. So what should you eat for breakfast? The answer isn't one size fits all, but emerging research points to several principles that can guide better morning meal choices for most Americans. First, prioritize protein. Aim for at least 25-30 grams in your first meal of the day. This amount has been shown to optimize muscle protein synthesis, balance blood sugar, and reduce cravings throughout the morning. Practical options include 3-4 eggs, Greek yogurt with nuts and seeds, protein smoothies with added collagen or whey protein, or even leftover protein from dinner the night before. Jennifer, a 38-year-old elementary school teacher from Boston, transformed her health by making this single change. "I used to eat a bagel with cream cheese every morning and would be starving by 10 a.m., she told me. After switching to a breakfast with eggs, avocado, and some berries, I not only lost 18 pounds over 6 months without trying, but the brain fog I'd struggled with for years completely disappeared. Second, include healthy fats with your breakfast. Quality fats, slow digestion, moderate blood sugar response, provide essential fatty acids and help your body absorb fat-soluble vitamins. Beneficial options include avocados, olive oil, grass-fed butter, nuts, seeds, and eggs from pasture-raised chickens. These fats trigger the release of cholecystokinin, a hormone that promotes satiety and stabilizes blood sugar. Dr. Mark Hyman, founder of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, explains, "Fat doesn't make you fat. It's excess sugar and refined carbs that drive obesity and metabolic dysfunction." Including healthy fats at breakfast helps regulate hunger hormones and provide steady, sustained energy rather than the crash and burn cycle of high-carb breakfasts. The third principle is to be intentional about carbohydrates. This doesn't mean eliminating them. It means choosing carbs wisely and in appropriate amounts for your metabolic health. Fiber-rich, nutrient-dense carbohydrate sources like berries, non-starchy vegetables, and small portions of properly prepared whole grains can be beneficial parts of breakfast when balanced with protein and fat. The key difference between these carbohydrate sources and those found in typical American breakfasts is their impact on blood sugar. The glycemic index, GI, measures how quickly foods raise blood glucose. Traditional breakfast foods like cereals, pastries, and toast, even whole grain versions, typically have high GI values between 70 and 90. In contrast, berries have GI values around 25-40, and most vegetables are even lower. Dr. David Ludwig, endocrinologist and professor at Harvard Medical School, has studied the effects of different breakfast compositions for over 25 years. His research shows that high glycemic breakfast foods not only drive hunger and food cravings, but actually change brain activity in the reward centers, creating a biological drive to seek out more high-calorie foods later in the day. The fourth principle may be surprising. Consider whether you need to eat breakfast at all. The conventional wisdom that breakfast is the most important meal of the day stems largely from observational studies showing that breakfast eaters tend to be healthier than breakfast skippers. But correlation doesn't prove causation, and newer research suggests that the timing of your first meal should align with your individual metabolism, activity patterns, and hunger signals. The practice of time-restricted eating, which typically involves delaying the first meal until later in the morning or early afternoon, has shown promising results for metabolic health. A study published in Cell Metabolism found that subjects who restricted their eating window to 10 hours per day, for example, eating only between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m., showed significant improvements in weight, blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol levels, even without changing what they ate. Dr. Sachin Panda, a professor at the Salk Institute and leading researcher on circadian rhythms, explains, "Your body has a complex system of internal clocks that regulate thousands of metabolic processes. Aligning your eating window with your circadian rhythm, generally by eating during daylight hours and having a longer overnight fast, can optimize these processes and improve metabolic health. This doesn't mean skipping breakfast works for everyone." Dr. Panda emphasizes that breakfast skippers who are actually getting adequate nutrition later in the day may be perfectly healthy, while those who skip breakfast only to snack on processed foods throughout the morning are likely damaging their metabolic health. Michael, the marketing director we met earlier, found success with a personalized approach. "After my prediabetes diagnosis, I worked with a nutritionist who helped me develop a completely different breakfast strategy. I now eat a substantial breakfast with about 30 grams of protein, healthy fats from avocado or nuts, and a small portion of berries. On days when I exercise in the morning, I eat right after. On other days, I often delay breakfast until I feel genuinely hungry, which is usually around 10 or 11 a.m. 6 months after changing his breakfast habits, Michael's blood sugar markers normalized completely. My doctor was shocked. She said she rarely sees that kind of reversal without medication. But the biggest change for me is how I feel. The mid-morning energy crashes are gone. I can focus all day, and I'm not constantly thinking about food." The fifth principle addresses another common breakfast mistake: rushed, distracted eating. The pace and context of your morning meal matter significantly. Research on mindful eating shows that taking time to sit down, eliminate distractions, and eat slowly improves digestion, enhances satisfaction, and reduces total calorie intake throughout the day. A study from the University of Rhode Island found that people who ate their breakfast slowly consumed fewer calories at lunch and reported feeling less hungry throughout the morning compared to those who rushed through the same meal. The researchers identified several physiological mechanisms behind this effect, including more efficient nutrient absorption and better hormonal signaling between the digestive system and the brain. Dr. Susan Albers, a psychologist at the Cleveland Clinic and author of several books on mindful eating, offers practical advice. Even if you only have 10 minutes for breakfast, putting away your phone, turning off the TV, and sitting down to focus on your meal can transform your relationship with food and your body's response to it. This doesn't require meditation or special techniques, just bringing your full attention to the experience of eating. This mindful approach to breakfast requires challenging deeply ingrained habits. Many Americans eat breakfast while commuting, scrolling through emails, or getting children ready for school. Yet making even small shifts toward more present intentional eating can yield significant benefits for digestion, satisfaction, and overall relationship with food. Now, let's address some practical considerations. One of the biggest barriers to healthier breakfasts is time, or perceived lack of it. The good news is that nutritious morning meals don't have to be time-consuming or complicated. Batch cooking strategies like preparing egg muffins or chia pudding in advance, keeping hard-boiled eggs on hand, or even assembling smoothie ingredients in freezer bags can make healthy breakfasts accessible even on the busiest mornings. Another common obstacle is the entrenched breakfast food marketing that has shaped American eating habits for generations. Walk down any grocery store breakfast aisle and you'll find row after row of processed cereals, breakfast bars, and pastries, all claiming to be part of a complete breakfast, despite being primarily refined carbohydrates and sugar. Breaking free from these cultural breakfast norms often means expanding your definition of what constitutes appropriate morning foods. In many cultures around the world, breakfast looks nothing like the American standard. In Japan, traditional breakfast might include fish, miso soup, and vegetables. In Mexico, eggs might be served with beans, salsa, and corn tortillas. These diverse breakfast traditions often provide better macronutrient balance than typical American options. As we conclude, let me offer a challenge. For the next 21 days, commit to avoiding the 5 breakfast mistakes we've discussed. Prioritize protein, include healthy fats, be intentional about carbohydrates, consider your eating window, and bring mindfulness to your morning meal. Document how you feel throughout the morning, your hunger levels, energy, cognitive function, and even your food choices later in the day. This 3-week experiment might just transform your relationship with food and your understanding of what your unique body needs to thrive. Remember, breakfast isn't just another meal, it's a metabolic reset that influences your biochemistry for hours afterward. Getting it right for your individual body can be the difference between struggling with energy, hunger, and cravings, or moving through your day with stable energy, clear thinking, and freedom from food preoccupation. If you found value in this information about breakfast mistakes to avoid, consider subscribing to this channel for more evidence-based nutrition insights that cut through the noise of fad diets and oversimplified health advice. Drop a comment below sharing your current breakfast routine and any changes you plan to make. Your experience could help others on their health journey. Remember, nutrition science is constantly evolving, and what we now know about breakfast is dramatically different from the conventional wisdom of even a decade ago. Staying informed and adapting your habits based on quality research, while always listening to your unique body signals, is the surest path to lasting health and vitality.